Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, mommies and daddies. Well, welcome to the day 6 of our Writers Summit. I am Maureen Paul, the moderator for today. Today, we shall be looking at poetry at a glance. If you can hear me, can I see your thumbs up on the comment section? Are we still there? Are we available? Well, I would start with the intro while I wait for your comments to know that you are live with me and you can hear me clearly. Today we shall be looking at Poetry Made Easy, which will be taken by Edogu Alex. Edogu Alex is a graduate of English from the University of Jos. He has had the privilege of teaching English language and literature in prestigious British schools. Having keen interest in poetry, he has taught as well as written quite a number of poems. Most of them are yet to be published. A language teacher, poet, and entrepreneur. Currently works as English instructor at the Building Blocks Learning Center, Abuja. He's interested in reading and writing. So let us give a round of applause for our facilitator for today in the person of Edu Alex. Over to you, Alex.
Hello, everyone.
Good
Good
evening,
evening.
Alex.
Thank you.
You're highly
Yeah.
welcome.
Can you? Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Can you turn
Okay.
on your camera? I can't see you,
Okay.
Alex.
Okay. Can you see me now?
Yes, you're highly welcome.
Okay. Thank you. I believe your day has been great, everyone.
Yes, it has.
Okay. I believe so. Okay. Um, Once again, you're welcome to this wonderful show. It's been a great time and it's been a great privilege. It's going to be a great privilege speaking to you all. So thank you once again for this rare privilege. Yes, my name is Alex, just like you know, and today we'll be speaking on poetry made easy. But before we go into that, I would just love to read you a short intro to this talk. There is a poem in every man. She lies within the bellies of your heart, craving to break out like a bird long caged. Just look deep within you, and you see how helplessly she lies, earnestly waiting for your touch to spring forth. So, just so you know, there's a poem in every one of you, and you just have to shake it up and then keep it in the tap for you to get ignited. Okay? So, today we'll be looking at poetry made easy. And at the end of this lesson, or at the end of this talk, you're going to learn the following. You're going to know what poetry really is. You're going to know the role of poetry in society. You're also going to know the categories of poetry, the elements of poetry, and how to write your own poem. Okay, so first of all, I would love to give you a brief history of poetry. Poetry. What is poetry? How long has poetry lived? How long have we known poetry? But then I would love to let you know that poetry has existed since the time of creation. Since the time of creation. Don't forget that poetry involves imaginative power put into words. So poetry has existed since the time of creation. And if you can remember in the time of creation, in the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 3, I believe I'm permitted to make references to the Bible. The book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 3, when God said, "Let there be light," and then there was light. I believe we know that God imagined deeply that there is a great need for the world to have shape because the world was in no form. And then he thought deeply, and then he said, "Let there be light." And then he used the non-negotiable power of words to create this word, simply saying, "Let there be light," and there was light. So that goes to show you that poetry has the power to create, and that is the same power that God used in creating the world. So, simply by the use of words, the world was able to be created. That's one point. And then, secondly, let's take a walk down to the Bible where we have the poetic books. If you are really familiar with the Bible, you would know about the poetic books. When we talk about the poetic books, we talk about the books of Psalm, we talk about the books of Proverbs, Songs of Solomon, Ecclesiastics, and the book of Job. You see, those books have a poetic form. That is why they are called the poetic books. They have a poetic form or a poetic pattern. You could see that these books made use of lots of figures of speech, especially in the book of Psalm. If we take the book of Psalm, chapter 23, verse 1, we have "The Lord is my shepherd," and that is a metaphor. It shows, we goes to say that God is like a shepherd to me. So the Lord is my shepherd. And then if you go through the books of Psalm 1, verse 3 to 4, if you go through the books of Psalm 5, verse 12, 17, and 18, 1, 3, 1, verse 2, you see the explicit use of simile in those books. So that goes to show you that poetry existed long before now. And then if you also check the categories of poetry, you will see that these books, the book of Psalm falls under the category of a lyrical poem, and then the book of Proverbs and as well Ecclesiastes has falls within the categories of a didactic poem that teaches, it instructs. The lyrical poem has a musical instrument which accompanies it, so that makes it a lyrical poem. And then the book of Job is more of a dramatic poem. So you see that all these books have poetic patterns, and then they can be categorized to be poems. Okay, so if you're with me, please, can I just see a thumbs up so that I know I'm not talking to myself? Okay, any thumbs up or any sticker or something? Just put something so that I know I'm not alone. Are we together? Okay, thank you, Setim Lawrence. Thank you, oh, thank you, Father. Uh-huh. Thank you, Amoyo Francisca. And here, thank you. I see you all. I see you all. So let's keep going. And then let's come down to thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for being with me. Thank you. Thank you. So can we go on with the lesson now? So let's go down to the time of our forefathers, our great grandparents, the people who lived before our great grandparents. They had a form of poetry which they passed down from generation to generation and generations to generation down to many generations. And that's why we have what we could call poetry now. It's an adaptation of what has existed long before we lived. So poetry has been passed from one generation to generation, and that is why we can speak of poetry today. Okay, so the question is, what then is poetry? What then is poetry? What is poetry? I would love to throw the question to any one of us. You could just tell us in your own words what poetry is. Your own words, what poetry is. Poetry. Okay. Anyone. Anyone. Tell us what poetry is. Okay. Okay. I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting. In your own words, what is poetry? or how do you perceive the word poetry? Because clearly there have been no specified definition for the concept poetry. So if you come up with with a definition now and you can prove it, come on, you're already a philosopher, and then you could add your own definition to the term, towards establishing a definition for the term poetry. So, is there anyone there who would love to give us his or her own definition of poetry? Okay. While I wait for your definitions to come in, I was going through the pictures of so many facilitators who have spoken who have been a part of this, and then I realized of all the facilitators, I had the strongest face. But I believe we know now that I can smile. I don't have that such. I don't really have that kind of a face. That was a passport though. But as you can see, I can smile. Okay, so this is me. This is my real face, although it's in the dark. So I'm still waiting for your definitions. Okay, okay. Anyone? Anyone? Okay, I can see no one. But then, okay, let's move on since no one has has brought forth any definition. So, just like I said earlier, there have been no there is no particular definition for the term poetry. There is no particular definition. Most philosophers, most people have have defined poetry based on the way they perceive the concept. And then I'm going to read through some of the definitions I have here. And notable amongst the definitions I have here are is the one of Williams Wordsworth, and he defines poetry as a spontaneous overflow of emotion recollected in tranquility. Emotion recollected in tranquility. So it means now when we say spontaneous, it means that it is not forced. It happens on its own. It is self-generated. So it's a self-generated flow of emotion recollected in tranquility. So, okay, thank you, sir. Poetry is expressing our feelings, ideas, thoughts, and thoughts imaginatively in writing. Thank you very much. You just grabbed everything. I love the fact that you made mention of the word expression. It's an expression, and it expresses feelings. It expresses ideas. It expresses thoughts, and it is imaginative. It is imaginative. Don't get me wrong when I said the book of the poetic books are poet it's a form of poetry. Now when I say that, I mean it doesn't mean that those books are imaginative. No, I mean that they carry the form of poetry. Just to clarify that they have the pattern and the form of poetry. So that's what qualifies them to be poetic books. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, just like I was saying, Williams Wordsworth is a spontaneous overflow of emotion recollected in tranquility. So it's self-generated overflow. That means it runs beyond its bounds. Okay, it runs beyond its bounds. So there's an overflow of this emotion recollected in tranquility. Okay, and then we have Shelley. Shelley is a romantic poet, and then she sees poetry as the direct representation of our actions and passions. Okay, a representation of our actions and passions. Okay, so that is the way he perceives poetry. Okay, and let's move to T.S. Eliot. T.S. Eliot sees poetry as an escape from emotion and personality. So poetry to him is an escape route. Okay, so it's more like an opening through which he could escape from life's worries, from emotions, from personality. So poetry to him is an escape route. Okay, and then we have Matthew Arnold sees poetry as the most delightful and perfect form of utterance that human words can reach. The most delightful and perfect. emphasis on the word delightful and perfect. So he sees poetry as perfect. He sees poetry as what? Perfect. So, and it is the most delightful or what and perfect form of utterance that human words can reach. Okay? And then I.A. Richard sees poetry as the record of happy play of impulses. The record of happy play of impulses. Okay? Okay, so quickly, without wasting so much time, let's see the functions of poetry. What is the role of poetry? What is the role of poetry to man, to our society, in the life, in to the next generation? What is the role of poetry? And I'm going to tell you the role of poetry based on the works of many philosophers who have lived long before now. Okay, and then I'll start with Plato. I'll start with Plato. Plato sees poetry. The role of poetry is to teach morals and contribute knowledge. The role of poetry is to teach morals and do what? Contribute knowledge. To teach morals and contribute knowledge. So if your poem does not teach morals, if your poem does not contribute to knowledge, then it has failed in its purpose of being a poem. Okay, it has failed completely. So a poem must teach morals and it must do what? Teach knowledge. Okay, and then according to Aristotle, he said poetry must bring forth pleasure. It must be pleasing to both the poet and the reader. It must be pleasing. It must be delightful. It must bring pleasure to you. So if your poetry doesn't gives you if it doesn't give you pleasure, if it doesn't seem delightful to you, then you should work on it one more time. Okay? And then if you go back to Horace, you could see that Horace also talks about poetry being delightful and didactic. It must instruct. It must be delight. It must bring forth that pleasure and as well instruct. So, and then if we also look at Philip Sidney, say that poetry must teach and it must bring pleasure. It must give the reader pleasure and it must also give the poet pleasure. Okay, so to sum it up, poetry must be engaging. It must have a strong influence, positive influence, not just on you, the writer, but the reader. And it must also inspire the readers with mastery of language. Okay? It must inspire the reader with mastery of language. And it must do what? It must also be intentional. It must bring forth that emotion that emotion you feel when you're writing it. It must bring forth that emotion. Okay, so let's go further. So to sum it up, the role of poetry is one, to teach. It must teach, it must instruct, it must be delightful, and it must inspire. Okay, if it fails to meet these three demands or four demands, then it needs to be worked on one more time. Okay, so we have the categories of poetry. Basically, poetry has been modified or has been grouped into three major categories. Three major categories. Three major categories. Poetry has been grouped into three major categories, and they are the lyrical poem or lyrical poetry. Okay, they have the form of music. They are most times accompanied with what? With musical instruments. So that's what makes it lyrical. Under lyrical poetry, we have elegies. Elegies, okay? A lyrical poem is presented like a song with emotional words. It's a song with emotional words to describe moments, feelings, or a person. Okay, so that's what a lyrical poem is. It's presented like a song, so it has this format of a song. Okay, and then we have under lyrical poems, we have elegies. You know, an elegy is it's a poem used to honor the dead. It's a poem used to do what? Honor the dead. Okay, so that's an elegy. So it could be it's under the category of um of a lyrical poem. We have odes. We have odes. We have odes as under the category of lyrical poems, and we also have sonnets. Okay, you know what a sonnet is? A sonnet is a 14-line poem with specific rhyme scheme. We're going to understand what a rhyme scheme is later as the lesson progresses. Okay, and then the second category of poetry is the narrative poetry, narrative kind of poem. It tells a story. It tells a story. Now, when you're narrating something, it's there's someone who is narrating an experience, who is narrating something that has happened in the past. So the aim of this kind of poem is to narrate. Okay, to narrate. It tells a story. And under this kind of poem, we have under this category we have the epic poem, just like Beowulf. Beowulf, which is it has an anonymous author, and talks about the feats of Beowulf, a hero. Okay, so it is on it has a format of a story, so it's a narrative kind of poem. Then we have ballads. Okay, ballads. Okay, you've heard of ballads, and then we also have burlesque. Okay, it's more like a satirical poem. A burlesque is a satirical poem. And then the last category of poetry we have is dramatic poetry. Okay, it is meant to be spoken and acted. Dramatic poetry. It is meant to be spoken and acted. We have monologues. We have a soliloquy, right? And then we have there's a slight difference between between a narrative and a dramatic, which I would love to clear out immediately. Narrative poem is told by a narrator. Okay, narrative poem is told by a narrator. While while dramatic poetry is written from the perspective of the character in that poem. Okay, am I writing too fast? Do I take a short break? Do I need to slow down? Am I writing too fast? Please let me know you're with me. Please let me know you're with me. Let me know you're with me. Am I writing too fast? Am I writing too fast?
How much time would you need for your break? You're not riding too fast. We're following.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I'll go on. Okay. So now let's see the elements of poetry. The elements of poetry. Elements of poetry. When I talk about elements, I mean the tools of poetry. The tools. The tools of poetry. Now we talk about tools used to create poetry. Talk about these tools we use now for every work of creation. That is, we have tools. Sorry. If he says I'm fast. Okay. Mixed reactions. Okay. So I'll just have to stand between. Thank you, Setting Lawrence for adding out thank you. So we have the elements of poetry. For every work of art, we have elements. We have tools that we could use to create this work. Okay, we have tools, and then for poetry has its own tools. It has its own elements that are specific or that are peculiar to this concept. And the first one we would like to talk about is the stanza. The stanza. Stanza. The stanza is peculiar to poetry. It is peculiar to what? Poetry. You don't see stanza in prose. You don't see stanzas in drama. It is peculiar to what? Poetry. So we have different types of stanzas. We have couplets, which is and then okay, sorry, stanza is unit of lines grouped together. Okay, it is grouped together. Okay, so what a stanza does to poetry, a paragraph does to prose. So a stanza is like a paragraph in poetry. Okay, what a stanza does to poetry, a paragraph does to prose. Okay, so we have different stanzas. We have couplets, which is made up of two lines. Okay, made up of two lines. We have a triplet, which is made up of three lines. We have a quatrain. The quatrain is made up of four lines. So four lines form a stanza. Okay, we have a sextet, sorry, made up of six lines. We have a sequence made up of five lines. A stanza made up of five lines. We have septet. It's a stanza made up of seven lines. An octave. An octave is a stanza made up of eight lines. Okay, and then we have the sonnet, which is the most popular of this poetry is a poetry which has 14 lines. Okay, 14 lines. So it has 14 lines, and then we have the Spencerian. The Spencerian is a stanza made up of 9 lines. It's Spencerian. Okay, now all these are what all these are kinds of stanzas. So just like I said, the stanza is peculiar to poetry. Now the second tool we'll be looking at is a rhyme scheme. A rhyme scheme. A rhyme scheme. The rhyme scheme. The rhyme scheme is the pattern of sounds that repeat at the end of a line or stanza. A pattern of sounds that repeat at the end of a line or stanza. So, just like this poem, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, take note of the last lines. How I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. So now we have the rhyme scheme AABB. So you see that in the first 2 lines, you have similar rhymes and similar scheme or similar words that end, similar sounds rather, that end these lines, star and R. So the rhyme scheme there is AA, and then we have sky and high. Sky and high. You see that the sound changes. I. Formerly it was R. Secondly, and then the last 2 stanzas we have I. So sky and high. So you see that the rhyme scheme changes. So in that rhyme scheme, we could say we have AABB. It adopts a rhyme scheme of AABB. Okay, so that is on rhyme scheme. So rhyme scheme has to do with the pattern of sounds. Sounds. Okay, sounds, not words. Sounds. And then we have a reading. A reading. I'm still going to make reference to the poem Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Reading has to do with the pace or the flow of beats in the poem. Okay, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. You see the rhyme. You see the rhythm. It has a rhythm. So now with this few points, now you see that that song Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star is qualified to be called a poem. Okay, because one, it has a rhyme scheme. It's made up of stanzas. It has it's a couplet there, right? And then it also makes use of a rhythm. So I'm going to use this poem to make reference. I'm going to use this poem as a reference to buttress other tools of poetry. Okay. Now we have imagery. What is imagery? From the word image. Image. Now it is the use of images. Okay. The use of images to create a lasting mental picture or a vivid picture of what the poet is talking about in his poem. What the poet. So we have visual imagery, we have auditory imagery, we have olfactory imagery, we have physical imagery. If you look at Twinkle Twinkle Little Star there, you see the imagery, you see the use of star there, you see the use of twinkle, you see twinkle there. It shows how the stars twinkle, right? So those are what images that the poet uses to do what to create a lasting picture in the mind of the reader. And it also, if you go to if you also read Maya Angelou's Caged Bird. Maya Angelou's Caged Bird, you're going to see how much imagery she used in that song, in that poetry. The poem actually talks about the suffering of blacks in America during reflect taking okay, it reflects towards the slave trade era and then also the contemporary American era. So it talks about the suffering of blacks, and then she uses lots of images to do what to present the suffering of these black people in America. She uses imagery like a caged bird. The title alone, caged bird, is an imagery. The bird put in a cage, so you could imagine how these blacks were suffering. They were caged. They were put in. It's more like their freedom was restricted. So that is what that cage bird there. That's what that imagery cage bird there represents. Okay, it represents the suffering of blacks, the limitations, the tight freedom of these blacks. Okay, so that's one more reference to imagery. Okay, and then we have figures of speech. Figures of speech as a tool used in poetry. Figures of speech. Figures of speech has to do with the use of figurative expressions rather than literal expressions to create what effectiveness to create an effective passage or effective rendering of the message of the poet. So a poet could 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 send his message through literal words, but it will be more effective when he uses or when she uses figures of speech, figurative expressions. Okay, and we have lots of figures of speech out there that we can explore. Popular among them, we have the simile, which has to do with comparison between using as and like. Okay, comparison of comparison using as and like, and then we have metaphor. The metaphor is a direct comparison. Okay, and then we also have personification, which has to do with giving animate attributes to inanimate attributes. For example, we could say the dancing tree, giving human attributes to non-human objects or things. Okay, so we could say the dancing tree, the dancing tree. So it's only humans that can dance, but then we use that expression to do what to qualify a tree. So we use it, we use the human attribute to describe the tree. Okay, okay. Can I slow down or do I keep firing? Please say hi so I know you're with me. Please say hi. Say hi. Say hi.
Hi. Let's
Okay,
wait for the
okay,
others in the house before we are
okay,
faster than them. Let their comments drop so we'll be
okay.
at the same pace.
At the same pace. Okay, thank you, Francisca Eni. Thank you so much. I see you also. Um,
We're together.
okay, we're together, right?
I think you can proceed
Okay.
now.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Wow. Okay, so I was talking about figures of speech, and then we have oxymoron. Okay, oxymoron. We have the paradox, and then we have onomatopoeia, which has to do with the use of sounds to represent concepts. So we could use a tick to represent a clock. We could use the tick tick of a clock, right, or the tick tock, right? How did they say it? And then we could also use what else? Moo of a cow. All these are used to do what? To are sounds used to represent um used to pass or to portray the poet's message to the reader. Okay, and then we have the tone and the mood. The tone and the mood is also a very important tool used in poetry. The tone and the mood. The tone is the author's attitude towards the work or subject matter. The author's attitude towards the work or subject matter. So now I'm going to create and then the mood. Okay, I'm going to define both of them and then use create an illustration so that you understand what I thought when I what I mean about tone and mood. Okay, so the mood here is the overall feeling of an author's um, okay the overall feeling the author conveys to the reader. So now the tone is restricted to the writer of the poet. So now, for example, now we are having a conversation and then I begin to yell. I begin to yell at you. That is my tone at that moment. Now, the feeling that action or that expression passes to you is the mood. So now the mood is particular to the reader of this poem. So now if I'm shouting at you, I'm yelling at you while talking to you, definitely your countenance is going to change, right? Now your mood. Now I've succeeded in doing what's affecting your mood. I've succeeded in one affecting your mood. So the mood is particular to the reader, the feeling the author passes to the reader, and then the tone is what is the author's what is the author's attitude towards the subject matter. Okay, so the author could choose to pass to choose to pass a happy tone. He could choose to pass a sullen tone. You could also choose to convey a sad tone, or could use to present a sad tone. Okay, and then how does he do this? He uses what? Sentence construction. His choice of words. He uses his choice of words to do what? To pass this, to convey this tone. Okay? He uses his choice of words. He uses sentence and then punctuation as well to do what? To convey his tone to the reader of
Um,
his poem. Okay?
Sorry, Alex, can I interrupt
Yes,
you a
please.
bit? Sorry, sorry. Can you
All
please
right, all right.
adjust your light? We can't see you at all.
Okay, sorry about that. Sorry about that. This is Nigeria, and things happen. Things happen.
You can
Just trying
you
to
can
improvise
adjust the
here. But it's
slide
all good.
so we'll be able to see a bit.
How about
I think
now?
this is a lot more better.
How about
Yeah,
now?
that's great.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
great. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Forgive Nigeria. Yeah, forgive Nigeria and forgive me as well. Okay. So
Sorry, class,
let's
for
go on. So
interrupting.
okay. Uh, okay. So another element or another tool of poetry is symbolism. Symbolism. It uses symbols to do what? It uses symbols to express, to represent something beyond the literal meaning. Okay? The use of symbols, the use of words or expressions to express something beyond the literal meaning. And just like I said, poetry has existed long before now, and they have, and some symbols are peculiar to poetry. Some symbols are peculiar, or we have peculiar representations of some expressions in poetry. For example, we have sleep. Sleep in poetry could represent death. Okay, and we have dreams. Dreams in poetry represent the future. The future. We have seasons as well. We have various seasons. We have spring, summer, winter, and autumn as well. So spring here represents youth, the youthful age. Summer represents prime, a man's prime. Okay. Winter here represents old age or death. So wherever you see all these expressions in poetry, you should know what they symbolize. They have specific symbolism. Excuse me, sorry. They have specific symbolism that they do that they portray. So when you see sleep, don't just interpret it as sleep. It has an underlying meaning. It has an underlying meaning, which means death. Okay, we have other expressions here. We have colors. We have colors. Colors here symbolize emotions. They symbolize emotions. Like red symbolizes anger. We have blue, which symbolizes happiness. We have white, which symbolizes innocence or purity. So all these are what symbolisms used in poetry. They have underlying meaning. So when you see these expressions, just don't take them the way they are. They have underlying meaning. Oh my God. Okay. Um, the next one is the next tool we're going to be looking at is the next tool would be themes. Okay, theme has to do with the central idea of your poem. What is the central idea of your poem? What is the central idea? What is it all about? Okay, theme. Just like every work of art, we have a theme for every work of art. We have a theme for every work of art. Okay, so know the theme of your write-up and then know how to present it or how to convey it to the reader. Okay, so we're moving to the last part of this presentation, which has to do with how to write your poem. How do you write your poem? What are the things that could make you present an outstanding poem? What are the things that could make you present an outstanding poem? Okay, are we together? I believe we are together. Okay. So, what are the things that could make you present an outstanding poem? What are the strategies we could employ or we could employ to do what? To present an outstanding poem. First, among all the strategies, is one, you have to read. You must read. You must read if you want to make it as a poet. You have to read. I remember when I started writing some years back, I started writing about love because and then when I was writing about love, I had to read lots of Pablo Neruda. I had to read so many sonnets just so that I could effectively express this feeling of love. And then, funny enough, to cut the long story short, she is married now with two kids. Definitely not married to me. Okay, so and here I'm teaching you how to go get your heart broken. Please, I mean, my main aim is to teach you how to write an outstanding poem to teach you how to get your heart broken. And then as time went on, I started writing about depressing poems. And then I had to read lots of Emily Dickinson, and I had to get a feel of all her feel of her depressing or emotional loneliness, all her write-up that presents loneliness. Okay, so you have to read a lot if you have to make it as a poet. Okay, you have to read a lot. You have to read a lot. And then secondly, you also have to listen to live poetry recitations. Listen to live poetry recitations. Listen to what live poetry recitations. If you when you listen to live poetry, it spurs you up. It gives you that feel that you need to write. It, it gives you that feel that you really need to write, and then it gears you up towards becoming a better writer. So you pick a lot, you learn a lot when you read, you learn a lot when you listen to others, then not when you listen to others present their own poetry. Okay. The next strategy is ask yourself why you want to write. What is the purpose of your writer? Why are you writing? Why are you writing? Why are you writing? What is the purpose of your writing? Why do you need to write? Do you need to write because you have a lot to impact on okay. Thanks so much. Thanks so much. Yeah, so, um, hello.
We are still with you.
Can you
Though skipping a
this one?
bit.
Okay, so
Thanks. So are we now clear?
okay.
You can proceed.
Sorry.
You can proceed. You're saying something about why we would like to write a poem. We kindly apologize for the interruption while we wait for a facilitator to return. Kindly bear with us. We apologize for the technical challenge we have there.
Okay,
Are you
sorry
now
about that. Sorry.
settled, Alex?
That's okay. Yeah, I believe so. I believe so. Just a little network um fluctuations. We're good. Good. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So, number four. Before you write, you have to make it right. You have to make that. What's it just how you
We sincerely apologize. Our facilitator is having a little challenge with his connection. While he works on that, kindly bear with us. Is the connection still giving you trouble, Alex? Hello, Alex. Are we now settled? Hi, Alex. Are we now settled? Is the connection still giving you trouble?
Hello?
We're with you.
Hello? Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, so the time was made draft. You have to make draft. But you check okay. How I make right. Okay. Please. You are improving. You are not right.
Alex.
So
Sorry, Alex. Can you hear me? You're skipping a bit. Kindly log out and log in again. We sincerely apologize for that. Let him just log out. Once he logs in, I think we get a better and cooler sound. Thank you while we work on that. While we wait for him, I'd like to remind us all to always grant permission to StreamYard, though we're doing a very good job so far. I've not seen anybody without any comment without a name yet so far. So I can say we are doing a very good job. And also to remind us that registrations are ongoing. We are actually adding to the wealth of our experience and adding to our knowledge bank. We shouldn't hesitate to share this with our friends and let them know that we are partaking in a training such as this so that they too can partake in all that we are doing. And for those of us that would like to be part of the studio live, kindly check the StreamYard link on the comment section to log in. Thank you so very much for your understanding despite our challenges. You've stuck with us. Thank you. We sincerely appreciate all your efforts.
So you can go.
Welcome back, Alex. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Kindly proceed if you can hear me.
Hey, loud and clear. And say loud as that. Okay. So, um, take it off. And you can start it off. And say that goes back to you to deck. So you walk off your you don't go in back start.
Once again, I'm apologizing for the challenges we had. One of our speakers spoke the last time about third world Africa. This is what we go through in some part of the country. We sincerely apologize. I pray that after this, we will have people who would take up the challenge and become tech masters. So we wouldn't be having this kind of challenge with our network. Kindly proceed, Alex. I think you're back online.
Uh, about
Do you have any other network source? Maybe you should try to switch connections.
okay, yes, for coming back.
The audience actually can't hear you. Your connection is quite a trouble this evening. Can you hear me, Alex? You have an alternate source? Sorry for that. People in the house sincerely apologize for that. While he works on that, please bear with us. I know all of us in the house are having a bit of a challenge hearing him. It's a wonderful talk he has there, but his connection is quite a challenge for us all. We can't hear, but please bear with us while he works on that. Is that a new source, Alex? Can you turn on your mic? I can't hear you.
Yeah. Hello. Hello. Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Right. I'm sure you're tired of me apologizing to you since the beginning of today's session. I don't want to give excuse of what we have in the country or what we've been facing, but actually this is the reality. It is not making in any way to have this session messed up this way. But we sincerely, right from the depth of our heart, apologize. We'll find a way to get the slide so as to make it easy for each and every one of us to understand the content of the session if we can pull through with this. Hello, Alex, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
There's just this glitch. It keeps skipping, and I can't seem to hear you clearly.
Wow.
Hello, once again. Good evening, everyone. We apologize for the breaking transmission for the session that is currently ongoing. I'd like us to know that tomorrow we'll be looking at mastering in the skill of editing. We know that editing is a must have or must do for every writer. So we should try our best to not miss tomorrow's class because tomorrow's class is a vital aspect of writing as a whole. So please keep a date with us. Same time tomorrow, we'll be having one of our exciting facilitators, Charles Ayebisi, tomorrow, once again, taking us mastering the skills in editing. So we hope to see you same time, that's 8:30 p.m. Nigerian time. And should in case we're unable to connect back with our current facilitator, then like I said earlier, we sincerely apologize. We'll find a way to make it up to you for this particular session. It shall be a good night from our end. Thank you so very much for your time. And sorry once again.
Hi,
Okay.
can you
Welcome
hear me
back.
now? Ah,
Yes, we
thank you so
actually
much for
thought we've
having
lost
me.
you like for the rest of the day. Thanks for coming back.
No. I was actually making efforts to ensuring I finish this talk.
We saw through
And thanks
that.
for your patience. Thanks for your patience. I really
Thank you.
appreciate that. Yeah,
You're most welcome.
yeah. Okay, so may I proceed?
Yes, audience, if you're still in the house and have not given up on us, can I please
Oh,
see
please.
you? Let me just
I'm
see your
really
comments,
sorry.
the comment
Please,
section,
just send
so
me a
I know
hi.
we are still
Please, send me a
together.
hi. Please, I'm really sorry. I sincerely apologize for
For the
this. I'm
effort he
really,
puts
really,
in
really,
to
really
come back
sorry.
online.
I sincerely apologize for this. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And to Padua Akban, thank
That's
you so
Anthony
much.
Akpan.
Yes, thank you so much, Francisca Enie. Thank you so much. I see you. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for waiting. I really appreciate this. I really appreciate this.
So
Okay,
kindly
anyone
proceed,
else?
Alex.
Okay, okay. I'll just read through the strategies I was talking about before um the network started playing. So just like I said, you have to read lots of poems. You have to read to expand your knowledge of poetry. And then secondly, you have to listen to live poetry recitations. You have to listen to others do it. Now there's a difference between reading and listening. Okay? Reading and listening. So just do the two. Okay? They have a way of inspiring you and pushing you and trying to spur you up to write more. Okay? And then thirdly, you have to ask yourself why you want to write. Why do you want to write? What is the aim of your write up? Okay? It will guide your thoughts. Okay? So you have to do what? You have to ask yourself questions. Okay? And then number four, we have make a draft. Just like I said, you have to make a draft. You have to have an outline to guide your thoughts. Okay? And then number five, write something. Just write something. Okay? You have to write something. No matter how small it is, just write something so that you know that you are moving from one level to another. So write something, no matter how small. And then when you write something, ensure that you are your number one fan. Okay? You can't, no one is going to love your work when you don't love your work. So you have to do what? Ensure that you are your number one fan. And then when you begin to appreciate your work, you see lots of people begin to do what? Appreciate your work. It is transferred. The likeness for your work is transferred to others. Okay, so ensure that you are your number one fan. Okay, and then number 6, you have to, I'm talking about your language now. It has to do with your language. Number 6 has to do with your language. You have to use simplified words. Use simplified words. Don't go and get 72 dictionaries, both Hebrew, Spanish, English, and all that, just because you want to write a page of poetry or a page of poem. You have to use simplified words. The first words that come to you, put them down. You have to put them down. Please don't bother yourself going to look for. It only gets you more confused. As time goes on, you begin to build your own words. You begin to build your own words, and then you begin to know how to fuse these words into your work. So use simplified words, and then use concrete words rather than abstract words. As a beginner, use concrete words rather than abstract words. Okay? When I say concrete words, I mean words that we could feel and touch and we could easily relate to, rather than using abstract words. Okay? And as time goes on, and when you believe that you are doing better, you could begin to fuse in all these abstract words, and then before you know it, you are a Pablo Neruda of our time, and you are a Shakespeare of our time. Okay, so ensure that you use concrete words. And then number 8, you have to avoid cliches. Avoid cliches. Avoid cliches. As busy as a bee, as small as an ant. No, you have to do what? Avoid cliches. And then even if you must use any cliche, you have to find a way of making it not to look like a cliche. Look for better expressions. Look for better words to use. Not the words that are already common, words that we could use, that we use every day. No, use better expressions. Avoid cliches, and don't overload your work with cliches so that it doesn't look drab to the reader. Okay? And then number 9, you have to use imagery. It still goes back to the use of concrete words. You have to use what? Images. Present your thoughts using imagery or images, just so that you can create a lasting impact and a vivid picture of your work in the life, in the mind of your reader, in the mind of your reader. And then just this afternoon, Facebook reminded me of one of my love poems I posted some years back. That was in 2017, and I would really love to read this poem to you. It was one of the poets that led to a serious heartbreak. I would love to read it out to you. Just a moment, okay? And it's the title of this poem is just a moment, okay. The title of the poem is Tomorrow's Eve. Tomorrow's Eve. It was written in 2016. And then it says, today, let's eat and drink. Let's sing those lovely melodies and smile to old memories. Today, let's walk through the quiet and lonely park, hold hands like bride and groom, and make those soundless whispers into listening ears. For tomorrow, when it's done, we shall disperse like the farmer's countless seeds, one to the east and the other to the north. Okay, this was written in 2017, and then eventually, this poem was it was written in 2017, and it was kind of a prophetic poem. It actually we were posted one to the east and one to the north after all the kiniko, just like Nigerians would say. So try as much as you can to use images, okay? And then number 10, which is the most important of all the rules or all the strategies, there is no specific rule to writing a poem. There is no specific rule. No one is telling you to use iambic pentameter. No one is telling you to use rhyme scheme. No, we have all grown beyond those phases.
or those phases were peculiar to the time of Shakespeare, the Romantic poets, and all that. Now you could just express yourself using words, express them as plainly as they come. Don't try as much as you can to form a rhyme scheme. If when it's not necessary, it only makes you lose focus and lose purpose of writing. Okay, so just write the words as they come. Okay, and then one more point: always walk around with your pen and a jotter, because the inspiration might just come at any time, palm, and then you just have to write it. And then when you don't write it down, it escapes, and it escapes forever. According to the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 2, it says, write down the vision so that he that seeth it might run with it. I'm just paraphrasing. So always write it down. Always write it down so that at any point it can come to you handy. You can use it at any point. So once the inspiration comes, just write it. Just write it down. I worked on a couple of poems which I didn't publish, or those the title of of that collection of poem was Restroom Muse, because at every point in I was when I was writing those poems, it was always at the restroom, when I was about to take my bath, when I was about to ease myself, something just comes, and then I'm either with my phone, or I'm either with something just to write it down, because once it's gone, it never returns. So always write down something, because all the inspiration I got for that for those poems came while I was in the restroom. So if the inspiration was coming while I was in the restroom, why don't you take a book and a pen to the restroom? So always write it down. Always write it down. Write down something so that it doesn't escape. Okay. So today we have succeeded in looking at the history of poetry, or we've talked about the background of to poetry. We've talked about what poetry is, and I talked about the definition of poetry from various philosophers. I talked about Wordsworth. I talked about Coleridge. I talked about Shelley. I talked about T.S. Eliot. I talked about I.A. Richard, and lots and other philosophers. And then we talked about the role of poetry. What is the role of poetry in the society, to the reader and to the poet? We talked about poetry being delightful. We talked about poetry being instructive and didactic. We talked about poetry being engaging and inspiring. So we talked about also the categories of poetry. We talked about the lyrical poems. We talked about the narrative poetry. We talked about the dramatic poetry as well. And then we also discussed the elements of poetry, where I mentioned stanzas. I think I mentioned the kinds of stanzas we have. We have couplets, trossettes, quatrains, sessets. We talk about the cinquain, which has to do with the stanza which comprises of 5 lines. Talked about a septet, 7 lines, an octave, 8 lines. Talked about a sonnet and a spensarian, which has to do with the poem, a stanza that contains 9 lines. We also talked about rhyme scheme. Rhyme scheme, it has to do with sound at the end of lines or stanzas. We talked about rhythm, which has to do with the flow of beats in a poem. We talked about imagery, a creation of vivid images, or vivid idea of what the poet is talking about. So we have all these are what tools we use in poetry. We talk about figures of speech as well. And we talked about simile, metaphor, personification, synecdoche, oxymoron, paradox, and lots more. There are lots of figures of speech out there that you need to explore in your write-up. We talked about the tone and the mood, which is also a very important tool in poetry writing. The tone and the mood. The tone is peculiar to the writer, and the mood has to do with the feelings conveyed by the writer to the reader. Okay, the emotions conveyed by the writer to the reader. Okay. Then we also talked about the theme of your write-up. What is the central idea of a write-up? It guides you, it shapes you, it puts your write-up in check so you don't go out of scope. Okay. And then we also talked about symbolism, expressions that have underlying meaning. Expressions that have what? Underlying meaning. So you just don't see them based on their literal appearance. We have to also check their figurative implications. Okay, and I mentioned a few expressions that is conventionally used in poetry and their symbolism. Talked about sleep, which symbolizes death. I talked about dreams, which symbolizes the future. Seasons as well: the spring, summer, winter, which symbolize youth, the prime, and old age, respectively. We also talked about water, which represents birth. Colors, which represent emotions. We said the red represents anger, blue represents happiness, and white represents purity. If you go through some poetic works, you're also going to see some other symbolisms which are conventionally used in poetry. Okay, and then finally we talked about how to write your poem, how to write an outstanding poem, how to write, and then I mentioned a few steps or a few guides, and I'm going to run through them one more time. Number one, read lots of poems. Number two, listen to live poetry recitations. So you have to read and listen. Okay. Number three, ask yourself questions. Number four, make a draft. You have to make a draft. It's a blueprint of what you're writing, of what you're going to put out finally. So make a draft. You have to also write something. After asking yourself questions, after listening to people, write something. Just put down something. And I can remember I said I mentioned that you have to be your number one fan. You have to be your number one fan. If you are not your number one fan, I wonder who is going to fan you. Okay. So first of all, fan the heat in you so that others can come along and fan you as well. Okay. And then we also talked about your language. We said use simplified language. Use what is simplified language. Your language must be simplified. It has to be simplified. And then you could also use concrete words. Talk about using concrete words. Okay. And as time goes on, you become more familiar with abstract words. Okay. And then I also talked about avoid cliches. Don't use cliches. Don't use cliches. Don't use cliches. Avoid cliches. Unnecessary cliches could mar your work and then make it drab. And then I talked about the use of images. You have to use images. You have to use images so that you can create a lasting impact, a lasting picture of what you're talking about in the mind of your writer or of your reader rather. Okay, so and then finally you have to ensure that there are no rules. There are no rules guiding poetry. So don't restrict yourself to let's say unnecessary conventions. Write down the words as they flow, as they come out. You write them down so that you don't lose them. Okay. And then I mentioned that you should also always have a jotter. Have something you could use to write down your ideas as they come. Just write it down so that it doesn't slip off. Okay. So with these few points of mine, with these few points of mine, I believe I've been able to impact you in the aspect of poetry, and I believe you've been able to pick one or two things about poetry. And I believe that with this, we should have someone who is now poised to write something, who is poised to write something, and then watch it grow. It's a skill that you have to nurture, and then as you nurture it, you watch it grow, and then when it grows, I believe you'll be proud. You'll be proud with yourself. Okay, so with this, we've come to the end of my presentation and my talk, and I sincerely want to apologize for all the interruptions and all that. I'm sincerely sorry, and talking about interruptions, and one just happened. Sorry about that. Okay, so
You love the light
that is it.
immediately you got finished.
Sorry.
Thank you so very much for that. I said it seems you like staying in the dark. Did you just turn off the light the moment you finish the class?
No, I didn't.
Thank you so very much for,
Yes, please,
for
you're
the
most welcome. It's been a privilege.
insightful presentation. Thank you
Thank you so
for the
much.
in-depth knowledge you've added to us this evening. I want to
Most
sincerely
welcome.
appreciate you for all your effort. Despite the challenges, you still put up a good fight. Thank you so very much. It is time for questions
Thank
and
you.
answers. Please, if you have questions, kindly send them so our facilitator will attend to them in a while. While we wait for that, I'd like to mention something. Alex, on your profile, we have that you've written lots of poems, but
Yes,
you
please.
haven't published any. But I think we've got
Yeah.
good news for you. You don't have to wait anymore. I
Okay.
don't know if you're interested in publishing them. If you
Okay.
have interest in publishing them, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, I
I can
said
hear
if you
you.
have interest in
Yes.
publishing your points, you don't have to wait
Yes, please.
anymore. You don't have to go to a physical publisher to
Publisher.
produce
Okay.
hard copies. You can produce them online. You can have e-copies. You can even sell them. People are making money.
Wow.
I don't know if you follow our
Wow.
training so far, but you can actually publish them. You don't have to wait anymore. That's the good news I have for you. You can publish them on
Thank you so
Amazon.
much.
For those of us
Noted.
that
Noted.
I know most members of EPUB and those that have gone through some of our trainings are already publishers. So most
Publisher.
might be their
Okay.
project work, not for personal works, but you can also follow the trail. Use the opportunity, publish your work, show them to the world. You don't have to keep them. Most often when you put them on your Facebook, because as I was following, I got to know that most some of your works were posted on Facebook. And you know, a lot of
Actually,
times Nigerians, we don't like to read. We are very lazy when it comes to that. So you can put it up
true.
for the world to see. There are people out there looking for this knowledge. If you share it, it's better shared than kept in the box.
Kept.
So I think
Noted.
you should do something about that.
Noted.
Hello, audience.
Noted.
Francisca Amayo says, thanks so much for your perseverance, Mr. Alex. Continue despite the network challenges. Please, what is the difference between poem and poetry? In other words, how can they be used differently? You said that there is no specific rules in writing poems. Could you please talk more on that briefly? That's a
Okay.
question for you, Alex.
Noted. Noted. Okay. Poetry. Thank you so much, Francisca, and thank you for following. I really appreciate. I really appreciate that. I would like to talk about. I would like to start by talking about the rules in poetry. When I say there are no specific rules in poetry, if you check during the era of the early writers, we had most of them, or during their era, there was a particular trend where or during the time of Shakespeare and the others, they went through sonnets, and then there were particular rules for sonnets. But now, in our time as contemporary writers, there is something called the free verse. There's something called the free verse, and the free verse doesn't make use of all this rhyme scheme. It doesn't make use of all these need for rhyme scheme and all that, or iambic pentameters, or what. Free verse has to do with you just presenting your ideas as they come. Okay, so just like I said, when you follow conventions, you sometimes you tend to lose your aim or the purpose of your writing. Okay, you tend to lose the purpose of your writing. So that's what I mean by you mustn't follow conventions, you mustn't follow rules so that you don't lose your aim of writing. And then talking about poetry and a poem. So a poem is the end product of okay, poetry.
Poetry.
Okay, let me just read out what I have here. May I?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Okay, okay, okay. I'll just paraphrase since I can find it. So poetry has to do with all the forms, all the tools, and all the ingredients that make up the concept. But then a poem is the end product of the use of these tools. So after putting on these tools, after putting in these techniques, after going through this knowledge of poetry, the end product of this knowledge or the end product of these tools and how they are being harnessed is what we call a poem. Okay? Okay.
Yes, please.
Miss Francisca. So just like I said, poem is the end product of the use of all these tools and techniques that revolve around poetry. Okay, so poem is the main dish. Is the main dish after all these ingredients have been put in place. Okay, I'm just using a layman's term to express it better.
Professionally, how do we define it?
Sorry? Sorry?
I said professionally. How do we say it? How do we see it professionally?
How do we say?
How do we view poetry professionally?
Professionally, okay. Okay, let me just quickly read what I have here, what I have written down here. I think I found it. Oh no, just a moment.
Okay, take your time.
Yeah, please. Okay, just a moment.
With you.
Thank you.
Hmm.
Okay. Here it says, okay. Sorry, I just have to pick it out so that I don't miss out the words. On my note, it says, poetry has to do with the use of expressions, which are basically word choices, which are basically imageries, and lots more to do what? To evoke the reader's emotion. Okay?
Interest.
And then poetry has, yes, and then poetry has to do with what? Poetry has to do with what? Imagination. Imagination put into words. Now, a poem is the arrangement of these words. A poem is what? The arrangement of these words, just like I explained. Poetry is what? Imagination put in words. And then a poem is these words that have already been harnessed. Okay? That is what a poem is. Okay? So poetry is imagination expressed in words. And then a poem is the words, these words, how they are arranged to affect the writer's emotions. Okay, Francisca?
Thank you
So
so very much.
just like I said, poetry involves the ingredients, and then a poem is the main dish. Okay?
Well done, Alex. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
I can't
Thank
seem
you.
to see any more questions aside Francisca's. Okay, we have another one. It says, would you consider poetry as natural talent or one that develops over time through reading and listening to other poets? We would like to read some of your poems. You may consider publishing them on Amazon. Our moderator can show you the way out. She's a master equator. That's from our convener.
China's market is one of the most biggest and influential.
Okay, noted. Noted. Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for this question. So you said, do you consider poetry as a natural talent or one that develops over time through reading and writing? Well,
Through
most
reading.
people through reading, sorry, and listening. Well, most people are born with this talent of writing. Most people have this gift. It comes to them as a gift. And then to others, it is a skill that is being learned from reading and writing. Definitely when you read, thoughts come into your mind, right? And then it is being put up in writing. And then as time goes on, when you read and write, you realize that you become better. As a matter of fact, reading is like taking a journey to another land. Okay? That's what reading is. And then the more you read, I believe, definitely your scope is broadened and then you are able to put things down. So if you are able to read and write, definitely your skill is going to increase, is going to develop. Just like I said, some people are born with this gift, it is natural to them. Some people write as a result of their experiences. They put on their experiences in writing. So the use of word could come to one as a talent, and some it's a skill that is being honed and being made and made perfect. Okay. And then you said you would love to read some of my poems. Okay. I'll just run through
Yes.
my okay, just a moment so I can just pick out a few. So I can just pick out a few, just a moment.
But in the event we want for personal consumption, like
Okay.
oh, Amaya Francisco,
Well,
thanks for your response. I got it.
okay. Okay, you're most welcome, Francisca. You're most welcome. You're most welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Just a moment.
Thanks for a wonderful presentation. God bless you. Jonade Soto.
You're most welcome, sir. God bless you. You're most welcome, sir. God bless you. Most welcome. Most welcome.
I seem to not see some persons in class today. What happened? Lawrence, are you still in the house or did we lose you during the battle with the network? Marvels, I didn't see you in class today. What happened? You
Just
can
a
share a
moment.
link for the poems. You can share a link with
Okay.
the house so that
Okay.
yes, even if it's your Facebook handle or your Twitter, whatever handle you have, you could just share the link with the house so as would be able to read them ourselves.
Okay, noted. So
So
on
we wouldn't have
Facebook,
to
I
delay
am
everyone.
yes, on Facebook you could reach me on I'm Alexified I'm Alex Onoha on Facebook. Onoha Alex. Onuoha Alex. Onoha Alex on Facebook. And on Facebook, that's basically where you get most of my poems on Facebook. Onoha Alex. Onoha Alex. Just go through it and then you see some of my works. Okay, you see some of my works there.
Okay, thank you. No problem. We've heard from our facilitator for the day. That's his handle, Honor Alex. For those of us that would like to see his points, Facebook users, well done, presenter. Useful piece of knowledge. Facebook user, I don't know who you are. You didn't grant permission to StreamYard, so I can't see your name. Please kindly grant permission to StreamYard once you're logged in, so we'll be able to see your name when you make the comment. Thank you so very much, everyone, for your time tonight. Thank you so very much, our facilitator, for
Most
sticking it out with
welcome.
us. The Lord bless you abundantly
God bless you
and bless your
too.
efforts.
Amen.
Thank you so very
Thank
much,
you so much.
everyone.
God bless you.
From here, I think we've come to with all this. Welcome, Michael.
Welcome,
But
Michaels.
please next time kindly grant permission to StreamYard so we'll be able to see you directly. With this, we've come to the end of today's session. Please do have a wonderful night rest and stay blessed. Stay tuned with us tomorrow, 8:30, for another impactful session. Have a good night rest. Thank you so very
Have a
much.
good night.
Good night.
Yeah. Good night. Good night. Thank you so much.
Bye, Alex.
Bye, Maureen. Thank you.